Scholars interested in learning about culture might benefit greatly from artifacts. Archaeologists explore locations where ancient societies lived and utilize artifacts discovered there to learn about the past. Many ancient societies did not have a written language or actively record their history, so artifacts are frequently the sole indications regarding how the people lived. Hey folks, welcome back to Dig World. We're here to bring you the most amazing discoveries from the archaeological world. Today, we'll show you the top 5 archaeological artifacts. So, let's begin. Number 1. Pompei. Pompei is one of the most significant pieces of evidence of Roman civilization and, like an open book, gives excellent information about the art, tradition, trades, and daily life of the past. The city has emerged from centuries of darkness, just as it would have been when it was abruptly covered in the thick blanket of ash and lava that flowed down from Vesuvius's disastrous eruption. The year was 79 AD. The scope of the disaster was shocking. Life came to a halt in what had been one of the most bustling and magnificent Roman centers. The thick layer of volcanic material that submerged it made up to a large extent of ash and lapilli. Lapilli is a non-hard material if you don't know about it. This tremendous amount of lava material solidified Herculaneum, an ancient town of Pompei, into an extremely hard stone after settling. This ensured the city has remained intact until the present day, not only in terms of its buildings, but also of the contents inside the houses and shops, providing an absolutely fascinating picture of daily life. The walls of the residences are plastered with election propaganda or risque jokes directed at specific residents. The signage on the shop doors identifies the type of business or the owner's name, along with the exquisite villas of the aristocracy and the sumptuous homes of the middle class. There are humble dwellings where multiple families resided. Peasant houses, on the other hand, are built around vegetable gardens or tiny parcels of land. The brothels, squalid rooms intended as places of pleasure for sailors and travelers passing through, stood on the outskirts of the city. In the narrow lanes, the workshops and utility rooms provide further evidence of the daily routine performed by workmen and slaves, as well as the women of the house. Furniture, ornaments, gold and silverware, work tools, kitchenware, bronze and terracotta lamps, foodstuffs of all kinds, counters for serving drinks, grain mills and grindstones, workshops for making cloth, smithies, and outlets for selling groceries, fruit, and vegetables can still be found in the houses. History. Pompei, unlike other towns in Campania, constructed mostly by Greek immigrants, was erected by the Oscans, most likely between the 9th and 8th centuries BC, though evidence does not go back further than the 6th century. The village sprang up atop lava terraces that had been created ages before. It was a vital natural defense against the prospect of invasion by neighboring peoples. At the same time, due to the volcanic character of the terrain, the Sarno Valley area was unusually fruitful, allowing for the quick development of the agricultural sector. Pompei immediately developed touch with surrounding Greek colonies, absorbing their culture, manner of life, and Magna Graecia religion. The form of the Doric temple that stands in the triangular forum is evidence of this. For about 50 years until 474 BC, the city was ruled by the Etruscans, who held a portion of inland Campania. It was immediately returned to the Greek sphere of power. As a result, even the Samnites were compelled to yield to the Eternal City, but only after 3 long and painful conflicts, the most recent of which lasted from 298 to 290 BC. Pompei fell under Roman control as a result of the invasion of Campania, becoming an associate, a position that allowed for the preservation of certain local independence. Its history has been inseparably linked with that of the Eternal City since that time, and it was only on the occasion of the social war conducted by the Italic peoples in a final attempt to maintain their freedom that it allied itself with the insurrectional movement in 91 BC. However, in 89 BC, it was mobbed and stormed by Sulla, so it returned to the control of Rome. Colonia Cornelia Vernia Pompei was established as a Roman colony around 80 BC. Pompei, like in the past, continued to thrive and prosper in every sector, particularly the economic one, aided immensely by its lush hinterland and ideal location. All activities related to commerce and marine transportation saw development. This spectacular development had immediate consequences. On the outside, it increased Pompeii's prominence in comparison to other Campanian cities. On the inside, it resulted in increased riches. Many socioeconomic classes saw an overall improvement in their level of living. As a result, the middle class, or the merchants and business people who had established Pompeii's riches and enjoyed their reward, were able to establish themselves in a more prominent manner. Pompeii's thriving economy resulted in a significant population rise, widespread prosperity, and the town's extraordinary decoration. It's true that the middle class took great joy in competing with the aristocrats on the construction of magnificent homes. In order to outdo the aristocratic elite that had historically held power, the newly wealthy class competed in flaunting their money via the luxury of their homes and the preciousness of their decorations and jewelry. The majority of the urban construction boom occurred along Via dell'Abbondanza, a symbol of the new emergent class. Pompeii's vitality and magnificence, however, were destined to end. The earliest signs of the disaster appeared about 62 AD, when a powerful earthquake damaged the city and surrounding region. It took a lot of strength to recover from this hit. The poorest classes faced the most catastrophic impacts, with their homes being demolished. When Vesuvius erupted and sowed death and ruin on the city in a matter of hours, most of the public and private structures were still in the process of reinforcement and reconstruction. It was the 24th of August, 79 AD. The volcano's ash, lapilli, and lava began to pour down on the city, as well as neighboring Herculaneum and Stabae. Everything was buried to a depth of several meters behind a thick covering of volcanic debris. The occupants, who mostly fled in the direction of the shore, were smothered by the gas fumes, while some died in their homes. In the years since its discovery, archaeologists have excavated 60 hectares of the metropolis. To date, objects discovered include complete villas, mosaics, ceramics, frescoes, temples, stores, and art. The 1,150 hardened remains of the 2,000 victims left in the city are among the most horrifying finds. Nothing conveys greater melancholy than two individuals hugging. This couple had staked their lives on surviving the disaster together. A sorceress kit, the sensual Leda and the swan painting, a purebred horse wearing a saddle, and a Samnite burial with fine ceramics are among the other recent discoveries at Pompeii. Number 2. Tutankhamun's tomb. Almost lost to history, Tutankhamun was just 9 years old when he first became king of Egypt during the New Kingdom's 18th dynasty, circa 1332 to 1323 BCE. His narrative might have been lost to history if archaeologist Howard Carter had not discovered his tomb in the Valley of the Kings in 1922. His highly preserved tomb included a plethora of artifacts that provide us with unique insights into this time of Egyptian history. Tutankhamun ruled following the Amarna period, when Tutankhamun's likely father, Pharaoh Akhenaten, shifted the kingdom's religious focus to the deity Aten, the sun disk. Akhenaten relocated his capital to Akhetaten, also known as Amarna, in Middle Egypt, far away from the previous pharaoh's capital. Tutankhamun transferred the focus of the country's devotion back to the god Amun and restored the religious center of Thebes after Akhenaten's death and the tenure of a short-lived pharaoh, Smenkhare. Tutankhamun married his half-sister, Ankhesenaten, although they had no children. This muddled the succession line. Tutankhamun died at the age of 18, prompting numerous experts to speculate on his cause of death: chariot accident, murder by a blow to the skull, or even a hippopotamus attack. The answer is still a mystery. Tutankhamun's considerably older advisor and maybe step-grandfather, married the widowed Akhenaten and ascended to the throne. Howard Carter, a British Egyptologist, dug for many years in the Valley of Kings, a royal burial cemetery located in the west bank of the ancient city of Thebes in the early 20th century. He was about to run out of money to support his archaeological excavation when he begged his financial sponsor, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, for funds for one more season. Lord Carnarvon extended his stay for another year, and what a year it was. Carter discovered the first of 12 stairs leading to Tutankhamun's tomb at the beginning of November 1922. He swiftly retrieved the stairs and dispatched a telegraph to Carnarvon in England so that they might jointly unveil the tomb. Carnarvon promptly left for Egypt, and on November 26, 1922, they drilled a hole in the antechamber's door to peer inside. At first, I couldn't see anything, the hot air escaping from the chamber, causing the candle flame to flicker, Carter writes. But presently, as my eyes grew accustomed to the lights, details of the room within emerged slowly from the mist, strange animals, statues, and gold. Everywhere the glint of gold. Tutankhamun's sarcophagus, a box-like stone container, housed not one, but 3 coffins containing the king's body. The outer 2 coffins were made of wood and coated with gold, as well as several semi-precious stones including lapis lazuli and turquoise. The inside casket, on the other hand, was composed of solid gold. When Howard Carter initially discovered this casket, it was not a gleaming golden picture that we see now in the Egyptian Museum. Carter writes in his excavation notes that it was coated with a thick black pitch-like substance that ran from the hands down to the ankles. This was clearly an anointing liquid that had been poured over the casket during the burial process in large quantities, at least 2 buckets full. The pharaoh's image is that of a deity. The gods were considered to have gold skin, silver bones, and lapis lazuli hair. Thus, the monarch is depicted here in his heavenly form in the afterlife. He wields the crook and flail, which represent the king's authority to reign. Inlaid with semi-precious stones, the goddesses Nekbet vulture and Wadjet cobra extend their wings across his body. 2 other goddesses, Isis and Nephthys, are engraved into the gold lid underneath these 2. The death mask of Tutankhamun, the death mask seen above, is regarded as a masterpiece of Egyptian art. It was initially placed squarely on the mummy's shoulders within the innermost gold casket. It's made of 2 gold sheets that were hammered together and weigh 22.5 pounds and 10.23 kilograms. Tutankhamun is pictured wearing the striped Nemes headdress, the striped headcloth common to ancient Egyptian pharaohs, with the goddesses Nekbet and Wadjet guarding his brow. He also wears a fake beard, which links him to the image of a god, as does the inside coffin. He wears a wide collar with terminals designed like falcon heads. The reverse of the mask is inscribed with spell 151b from the Book of the Dead, which the Egyptians used as a guide to the afterlife. This enchantment guards Tutankhamun's numerous limbs while he journeys toward the underworld. Number 3. Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone, a dark-colored granodiorite stela engraved with the same text in 3 scripts, hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Greek, represents different things to different individuals. During Napoleon's conquest of Egypt in July 1799, French soldiers discovered the stone near the city of Rosetta, contemporary El Rashid. Rosetta was situated on a Nile tributary on the Mediterranean shore east of Alexandria. Officer Pierre-François Xavier Bouchard, 1772 to 1832, discovered the big engraved stone piece when Napoleon's soldiers were erecting fortifications. He realized the importance of the juxtaposed Greek and hieroglyphic writings right away, accurately forecasting that each script consisted of a translation of a single document. The translation of the Greek description of how the stela's content was to be proclaimed confirmed this guess. This edict shall be written on a stela of hard stone in holy hieroglyphic, native Demotic, and Greek letters. As a result, the Rosetta Stone, also known as the Stone of Rosetta, was called after the location where it was discovered. Since its discovery, the Rosetta Stone has become a worldwide icon, with its kaleidoscopic symbolism taken by many organizations over the previous 2 centuries. Its present home at the British Museum is a relic of France and England's imperial ambitions in their quest to build, retain, and enlarge colonial empires in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The stone itself carries the scars of these fights, with the words, "taken in Egypt by the British Army in 1801" and "given by King George III" painted on both sides. Egypt, which was a part of the Ottoman Empire at the time, was caught between conflicting political powers. Napoleon's invasion of Egypt in 1798, followed by his defeat by British and Ottoman forces in 1801, ushered Egypt into a century marked by exploitation. Repression of autonomous development by European powers sparked considerable protest, resistance, and occasional revolts, which frequently rallied around nationalist feelings among the largely Islamic and Coptic populace. The stone was handed over to the British in the Treaty of Alexandria in 1801, and it was added to the British Museum in 1802. It has been on virtually continuous display there, with registration number BMEA24. This historical background is critical for understanding how different societies created the Rosetta Stone. The stone symbolizes political hegemony and scientific discovery for Napoleon's men who discovered it, as well as for British forces who confiscated it after the French defeat. For many Egyptians, the stone has served as a symbol of their common cultural and national history. As a result, some have viewed the export of the Rosetta Stone as a form of colonial theft that should be atoned for by reparation to the present Egyptian state. Because of its importance in interpreting ancient Egyptian inscriptions, the name Rosetta Stone has come to apply to anything that decodes, ciphers, or unveils hidden mysteries. As researchers attempted to interpret Egyptian letters using the Greek translation, the trilingual aspect of the inscription on the Rosetta Stone sparked a decipherment frenzy throughout Europe. Although popular belief associates the Rosetta Stone with Egyptian hieroglyphic characters, the first substantial attempts towards decipherment concentrated on the Demotic inscription since it was the best preserved of the Egyptian variants. Antoine Isaac Silvestre de Sacy, 1758 to 1838, a French philologist, and his Swedish pupil Johann David Kerblad, 1763 to 1819, were able to identify the phonetic values for many of the so-called alphabetic signs, read personal names, and translate a few other phrases. The personal names of the kings and queens stated in the Greek inscription were used as a starting point for these attempts, with the goal of matching their sounds to letters in the Egyptian counterparts. These advances set the ground for the now famous competition in the race to translate Egyptian hieroglyphs between Thomas Young, 1773 to 1829, and Jean-François Champollion, 1790 to 1832. They were both excellent. Young, who was 17 years his senior, made remarkable progress with both the hieroglyphic and demotic characters, but it was Champollion who led the decisive breakthrough. Champollion had devoted his intellectual energies to ancient Egypt since boyhood, studying Coptic under Silvestre de Sacy. Champollion verified the notion that Egyptian hieroglyphs conveyed phonetic sounds by successfully deducing the interpretation of the hieroglyphic writing of the term "to give birth" using his Coptic knowledge. At that time, he became the first person in well over a millennium to read Ramses and Thutmose's Cartouches in their original language. According to Champollion's nephew, upon realizing the significance of this confirmation, Champollion stormed into his brother's office, yelled, "I've got it," and fell, lying comatose for over a week. Champollion identified himself as the father of Egyptology, with his extraordinary achievement, incorporating the Rosetta Stone into the development of a new field. Scholars were able to prove the Rosetta Stone represented 3 translations of a single text once Champollion and his successors mastered the mysteries of the Egyptian script. The text's substance, which was already known from the Greek version, was an edict issued in the name of King Ptolemy V's Epiphanes. On March 27th, 196 BCE, a synod of priests from all across Egypt met at Memphis, Egypt's historic capital, to commemorate the coronation of Ptolemy V Epiphanes the day before. Memphis had been economically superseded by Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast at the time, but the city retained an essential symbolic link to the pharaonic past. The royal proclamation issued as a result of this conference was engraved on the stele across the nation. Because the gathering and coronation were held in Memphis, the writing on the Rosetta Stone, and hence the stone itself, is frequently referred to as the Memphis Decree. The edict is documented on numerous additional Elephantine and Tel al-Yad stelae, with certain parts duplicated on the Nobeira stela. Number 4. Terracotta Army. Who exactly are the warriors? You may have seen them in a museum display, as an illustration in a book, or as a reproduction as decor in a house or restaurant. The Terracotta warriors, unearthed in the tomb of Qin Shi Huangdi, China's first emperor, are one of the most famous pictures of Chinese heritage in the world, alongside the Great Wall of China and the Forbidden City, and one of the most toured displays of Chinese art in the last century. The warriors appear to be a pile of similar figurines or a giant set of toy soldiers when viewed from a distance in their original excavation site at Lixin, near the city of Jian in Shanxi Province, China. However, up close, each figure appears to reflect a distinct individual, with different tunic forms, features, and hairstyles. Each soldier wears a finely produced, bulky tunic that is secured with delicately made knots and has a forceful stare, giving the impression that you are meeting someone from thousands of years ago. Some of the first historians to write about the Terracotta warriors depict them as pictures of the first emperor of China's army replicas of genuine warriors who previously lived that Qin Shi Huangdi, the great 3rd century state builder, brought to his tomb. But who exactly are we staring at? Are these true pictures of Chinese warriors from the 3rd century BCE? The Terracotta warriors were found by chance in 1974 by farmers excavating for a well and unearthing numerous sculptures. Archaeological excavations quickly discovered 4 massive subterranean chambers referred to by archaeologists as pits, and these specific places are known as the army pits, 3 of which contained broken shards of terracotta soldiers. While the site of the first emperor's tomb mound had long been known, the terracotta figurines were unlike anything documented in the written record or seen in other graves. Pit number 1 is the biggest of the army pits. It is a big chamber sunk into the soil, with log-reinforced walls and a wooden ceiling. Inside, dirt embankments divide 11 passageways with troops lined up in combat formation. The large pit was covered by a ceiling built of strong wooden beams, with 5 broad ramps on each side allowing workmen to transfer the terracotta warriors into the lamp-lit tomb as they were created. The panoramic perspective of the pit that we now have as a consequence of removing the giant oak beams that made up the ceiling is not one that the laborers would have seen, but rather a staged experience experienced by the modern museum-going public. Inside the pit, around 1,900 clay infantrymen are escorted by 22 wooden chariots drawn by 4 ceramic horses and manned by even more terracotta soldiers. All of the figurines have uniquely sculpted armor, haircuts, and headdresses, allowing differences between the ranks of the soldiers and their many duties in an army, from archers to infantrymen to charioteers. Though their armor is meticulously recreated in clay, the weapons they used were real. The wooden components of each weapon have decayed, but the bronze spearheads, swords, and crossbow components were discovered by archaeologists by the warriors' side. Pit 2 is divided into 4 parts and has a broader range of items. Section 1's eastern end has a double row of archers and spearmen in front of 6 columns of standing and kneeling archers separated by embankments. Section 2 on the pit's southern end, on the other hand, is mostly made up of chariots, 64 in all, each driven by 4 horses and accompanied by a driver and 2 aides. Section 3 consists of 19 chariots, 264 infantrymen, and a minor cavalry detachment at the rear. Finally, Section 4 is mostly cavalry, with 108 cavalrymen and saddled horses escorted by a group of 6 chariots. The usage of the cavalry was a relatively new idea during the time of the first emperor, having only been brought to China in the 4th century BCE. Qin was one of the first governments to create cavalry as part of their military force, which aided the first emperor's unification efforts. The cavalryman is shown here in the saddled horse, clothed and in a short armored jacket worn over a robe with a pleated skirt meant to allow easy riding. Pit 3 is the smallest and sparsest of the 3, as well as the most perplexing. It's U-shaped, with 22 armored infantrymen on the north wing and 42 in the south, while the troops in the other formations face east, as if preparing to be deployed away from the mound. The soldiers here face each other, as if awaiting a leader to enter from the central chamber. A central area connecting the 2 wings houses a chariot facing the main ramp on the east side, not pictured nor displayed due to its fragility. Unlike the chariots in the other pits, it was lacquered in colorful geometric designs and covered by a circular canopy, indicating that it belonged to a member of the High Command. According to some experts, the sumptuous chariot might have represented the inferred presence of the first emperor as a supreme military commander. A 4th hole was excavated, although it contained no troops, possibly because it was not completed on time. What was the objective of the massive army gathered in these pits? An empire inside a tomb. Burying attendants in graves near the king, as well as key symbols of rulership, such as chariots or ceremonial bronze objects, had long been customary practice in China prior to the reign of the first emperor. Musical instruments and furnishings were frequently buried in divisions surrounding the burial chamber, transforming these compartments into rooms dedicated to different hobbies. Modeling tombs as models of living residences is an essential characteristic of Chinese funerary culture that evolved over time. Beginning approximately the 6th century BCE, graves began to contain copies of domestic goods and, on occasion, little figures representing attendants to assist the tomb dweller in the afterlife. Warriors' features are detailed and carefully sculpted, while their legs and feet are simply modeled. They wear large, heavy shoes and have stocky legs that resemble rough cylinders and connect to the upper thighs covered by the coat. There's a structural rationale for the rough and heavy legs. They sustain the weight of the body, which the artists construct from the ground up. They also reveal crucial information about the soldier's construction. They are basic clay cylinders manufactured in the same manner as ceramic drain pipes in the tomb. Qin drain pipe segments were created by squeezing clay rolls into a cylindrical form. In reality, many of the troops' pieces are interchangeable. The soldiers and other terracotta figurines were built expressively to perform a part of the first emperor's eternal realm, much like characters in a play. Even though we are not seeing individual images of the first emperor's soldiers, the terracotta warriors masterfully trick us into believing that we are. Number 5. Richard III's grave. A team of archaeologists from the University of Leicester discovered the bones of Richard III, King of England from 1483 until his death in combat in 1485, in August 2012. As word of this surprising finding circulated throughout the world, the headlines focused on contemporary science's victory in identifying the skeleton remains and the determination of those determined individuals who set out to uncover them. The narrative of the burial itself, where the monarch had rested for nearly 500 years, was lost in the roar of media interest. Despite being buried in the famous choir of a Franciscan friary, the grave's preparation received minimal attention. One element becomes strikingly evident when staring down into the grave currently maintained beneath glass floors at Leicester's King Richard III's Visitor Center: its vastness. When the projection of Richard III's skeleton fades into view, the size of the grave becomes clear. Because it is so short, the previous king's head was thrust forward and upward at an unnatural angle. Other burials discovered in medieval Leicester had previously squared sides, as do those discovered by researchers during the Richard III dig. The king's grave, on the other hand, is narrower at the bottom than at the top and is rounded where the sides meet the base. Another distinction between this and other medieval Leicester graves is the absence of a shroud or coffin. The entire burial was shoddy, as if the soil had been scraped out in a rush. Archaeologists returned in 2013 to expand their excavation surrounding the tomb site. During the dig, they discovered medieval floor tiles, which would have covered the floor of the choir, only 2 meters from the burial. When compared to the level of these tiles, it's clear that the grave was so shallow that it was barely below ground level. Nothing in history explains why Richard III's burial was so narrow, shallow, and short. It's probable that it was excavated in haste, with Henry Tudor wanting to leave Leicester for London as quickly as possible to win the crown. In this scenario, the anxious friars excavated the dirt themselves, supervised by Henry's angry troops. The dug trench in section, between the 2 yellow pegs, a light projection of Richard III's skeleton may be seen. So, this was it for today, guys. We hope you enjoy our content. Like and share the video if you did. Subscribe to Dig World's Unrevealed Finds of the Universe for many more amazing videos. Stay tuned, as we'll be back soon with another informative video for your amusement. Till then, keep digging.